Welcome back to the Cranmer Fellows podcast. I'm Jonathan Groves, the Assistant Rector at Church of the Good Shepherd and Director of the Cranmer Fellowship there. And I'm here with my co-host, as always, Matt Kennedy, the Rector of Church of the Good Shepherd and Canon for Preaching in the Anglican Diocese of the Living Word. If you've been listening for any amount of time, you know that this podcast is an extension of the Cranmer Fellowship at Good Shepherd. We're in Binghamton, New York, and that fellowship exists to train men to be biblical and faithful, courageous ministers of the gospel in the Anglican tradition. So if you would like to know more about the Cranmer Fellowship, you can always email us at cranmerfellowship@gmail.com. Today, we're discussing some of our favorite stories of the resurrection that are found in the Bible, of course, and appearances of Jesus. And we're also going to tackle some of the oddities in the gospel accounts when it comes to those resurrection accounts. So, Matt, we've taken a few weeks off because we've had a few busy weeks. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. We were also very sick for 2 weeks. Yeah, as soon as Easter was over, the plague hit the whole house, and we've been sick for 2 weeks. So, yeah. So
yeah. Well, at least it was after.
That's true. That's true. That's good.
I mean, Holy Week, and Easter are already extremely busy times.
Yeah. It happens almost every year. I get sick right after them because I've been holding it off until it's over, and then
your body won't let you actually. You can't get sick until you can wind down and actually get some rest, and then it says, nope.
Okay.
Now we can be sick. Well, I'm glad you're doing better now. Yeah, we also, man, my family had to miss Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday. So it was like my daughter and son and wife were really sick on Palm Sunday, and then they got better, but my son didn't get exactly what everybody had. And we thought during Holy Week, oh, he's probably not going to get it now.
I know.
And then after the vigil that night, he was sick.
He got it. Yeah.
Not exactly the Holy Week or Easter that we expected, but alas, here we are. Okay, it's good to be back doing the podcast. I thought we'd first start with, since it is Easter, talking about our favorite resurrection accounts. So I'll start with you, Matt. We'll start with your favorite. Do you have a favorite out of the four Gospels?
If you mean like the actual at the tomb accounts, probably I like Matthew's the best because it's the weirdest. I love the angel coming down, sitting on the opening up the tomb, sitting on the door. It's just so weird. And yeah, what does that mean? Why did Matthew include that? I mean, of course, the angel really sat down on the door. So that's one reason to include it. But there's so many interesting questions about why the angel's sitting there, why Matthew tells us about this. What's the were the women? I mean, the sequencing is also kind of odd. The way Matthew writes it, if you didn't have the other accounts, you could think the women show up as the angel's coming down, and they see the angel along with the guards, and the guards fall dead. The angel just looks at them and then talks to them. It looks like it's all happening at the same time.
So what's going on there?
Yeah. No. If you harmonize it, it's probably the case that the angel comes before the women show up, because the other Gospels have the women showing up and not seeing an angel until they go inside the tomb. So it's probably the angel shows up to the guards. The guards become like dead men. The angel then goes inside the tomb and waits for the women to show up. And then another angel shows up, or two more angels, depending on how you count, with harmonizing with John. That's probably what happens. I don't know, but it's just a strange. I love the strangeness of the account. I love how weird it is.
Matthew adds other things like that in his last chapter, even with like the crucifixion. He's the one who, he adds the tearing of the veil, but then the other people who rise again.
Dead bodies coming
Yeah,
up.
the dead bodies that come. Matthew, yeah, is having a good old time. It's like, man, why didn't any of the other gospel writers say that?
Yeah, no, it's great. I remember the first year I had to preach on that. I mean, because if you're our lectionary for Easter, we'll rotate between the Gospels for the Easter Sunday sermon. And the first time I had to preach on that, it was I didn't know what to do. It was so confusing, and I'm sure I bored everybody who was listening to me because I was trying to work it out as I was preaching. I was preaching, but in my text, I was trying to work it out in my text. It was really, I'm sure it was a terrible sermon.
Yeah.
Don't care about the logistics. Just get to the point.
Yeah. So looking at this account, it does read all like it happens at one time. Matthew, he's kind of bringing all the parts together. He's making it very compact, and able so that he can tell the whole story in a very quick sort of way and get to the big things that happened. And it's interesting. He adds the guards here because he's also going to be the only one who brings up them going to the chief priests and saying what happened. And then Matthew says that the story of the disciples coming and taking the body, that story is
still circulated, right?
Yeah, circulated throughout to the day that he's writing, which I find makes sense with Matthew's his goal and his purpose. Right. It seems like in his writing. He also adds Jesus seeing the women. What do you think is going on there? Because does the text suggest that Jesus sees them while they're leaving, like while they're going back, or does he meet them somewhere else, you think?
To me, it reads like, they're running out of the tomb, the joy and fear mixed together, and then he meets them. So my reading of it, and maybe you can't know for sure, is that he meets them there in the real close to where the tomb is, like as they're coming out, maybe a little bit down the path. I would typologically, I would love for it still to be in the garden, because we're told the tomb is by John that the tomb is in a garden. It'd be great if it was in the garden where the women met him, and then they fall down and take hold of his feet. Excuse me. And I had noticed it before. It's just a nice picture of. It has a lot of echoes of Genesis 3 or Genesis 2 and 3. The woman is the one who reaches out her hands and takes the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and plunges humanity into sin. And then it's from the woman that the seed will come, who will crush the serpent under his feet. And so here in the garden at the new dawn, you have the women reaching out, taking hold of his feet and worshiping him, and those are the feet that are scarred by the nails because he's just crushed the serpent. So it's just a nice, beautiful kind of recapitulation and reversal of everything that Eve did, and the curse that came to us through Adam's sin being undone in another garden with an empty tomb. So
Jesus appears to Mary first, right?
Yeah, but if we're going by, again, harmonizing here, we'd have to say, Mary is the first one probably to see him, because she's there. Okay, we'll go back. You've been doing this in Sunday morning. You've been harmonizing the gospel accounts. but most likely Mary, being younger, shows up at the tomb first before any of the others. Mary Magdalene. She sees the tomb empty. She jumps to the conclusion that the body's been taken or stolen because she sees the door open, and so she runs and finds the disciples. John and Peter race back. They see the tomb empty and the cloth and the shroud on the lying on the ground, and then they go back. Mary follows behind them. That's when she has her encounter, according to John, I think, of seeing Jesus, the gardener, and so I think she probably, she tries to hold on to him, and he tells her, "Don't hold on to me. I haven't seen the Father yet," which is a very interesting thing to say. We can talk about that later too. Like, don't hold on to me. I have not yet gone to the Father. And then I think probably she goes off to go tell the disciples. Then the other women come, and I think even though Matthew includes Mary Magdalene in his account, Matthew's famous for telescoping everything together. So I think what probably historically happened is the other women then show up after all of that, see the angels in the tomb, hear the message, run out. Then Jesus appears to them on the road on the way back to see the apostles.
Oh, so you think that the way you read it is that Mary gets there way before them, way before. Okay, yeah. Well,
it could be also that the other way. It could be that they see Jesus while she's still running to get the disciples or something. It could be they get there while she's running to get John and Peter. It could be the other women show up and see Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but
I see. Yeah, there are different ways. Yeah, many ways that it could have worked out. Yeah, So when it's kind of interesting that Matthew doesn't add Jesus ever appearing to the disciples until the ascension. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's interesting. He does. Matthew's and Mark both are focused on the message. I'll see you in Galilee.
Mm-hmm.
And so the importance of that meeting in Galilee, I think, if I'm understanding it correctly, is that it's the gathering of the whole church, because there were the 120 who came down with Jesus, or came up with Jesus to Jerusalem from Galilee, and then he would have left behind some believers. I think that's the more than 500 that Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 15. So going back to Galilee to show himself to the church, the whole church gathered together, is, I think, Matthew's emphasis. He wants to focus on Jesus's appearance to all those believers, and then his Great Commission. So he's not bothered with the showing up in the room and the Thomas and all that. He just wants to get them to Galilee to have the whole church see him.
Right. And then it says this, I guess this would be where when they see Jesus in Galilee, this is where the probably where the 500 that Paul talks about, the bunch of disciples, maybe they've gathered them together.
Yeah, I think that's where the 500 are. I think that when Jesus gives the Great Commission, I think it's all the disciples, not just the 12, but all the church gathered to see him.
Yeah. Why do you think some of them doubted after sin?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a strange thing. What does it mean? What does that mean? Did they doubt their eyes? Maybe. I can see. That's why that's one reason I think it's more than just the 12 there, because the 12 by that time would have seen him 2 or 3 times, but it may be the first time that the 500 has seen him. So, so you can see their mind. Oh my goodness, how can we believe what we're seeing at this point? You can see that doubt in that context.
Yeah, you got a 500, 500 people crowd too. You're like, what? Is it really him? Can't see. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll just go there because I want to go to the ending of Mark at this point, because you said something in Christian Ed about you thinking that Matthew might be filling in where Mark leaves off, or because Mark ends. I think I agree with you that the longer ending of Mark is probably, as Scribe added that in. It's not untrue. It doesn't seem like it seems to be consistent with the text. But
it just has all the stuff from Luke, has the stuff from
it reads like a synthesis. It reads like somebody trying to make sense of a hard to understand ending, which is that Mark says the women leave and they say nothing to anyone, which is just, to me, kind of a bizarre way of ending the gospel. So can you explain a little bit more of your view of what's going on there?
Sure. And this idea is not original to me. This is a lot of people think this, that, Matthew tracks Mark pretty well. And setting aside the debate about who Mark in priority or Matthew in who you think wrote first, I tend to agree with those who say Mark is the first gospel, because it seems to me that both Matthew and Luke have Mark when they're writing their gospels. So I think what we have recorded for us in Matthew is what he had in Mark. So I think Mark had an appearance of Jesus to the women leaving the tomb, and that it probably ended with that, Mark's gospel. Maybe with the Great Commission, I don't think so. I think it probably ended with the appearance of Jesus. But that would make sense with the pattern of Matthew's taking Mark's material and using it. Not that Matthew wasn't his own witness, of course he was, but he, back then, the plagiarism wasn't a thing. You took the other gospel and you ran with it. So yeah, I think we have, we if you want to know what the real ending of Mark is, I think you look at Matthew.
So then, like, the ending of Mark is just lost.
Yeah, and I think now it could be, we were talking about this in class. It could be that Mark wants to leave his readers with what they actually have. I mean, the readers actually have an empty tomb and the declaration of the angels. That's what we have. I haven't taken hold of Jesus' feet. I haven't seen him. You haven't seen him raised from the dead. So we're in the same place as the women. And it may be that the ending of Mark's gospel is intended to be kind of an implicit challenge. Okay, you have the same thing these women do. Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to go out and be quiet? Or are you going to go out and tell the world about what you see? Mm. Of course, it's historically true too. I mean, the women probably didn't say anything to anybody on the way to see the disciples, but there could be a pointed ending on Mark's part. And Mark really plays up, if you remember, the silence that Jesus wants in the beginning. The Mark in secret is what it was called. I was told it was called in seminary, where every time Jesus would heal somebody or do some great miracle, he would warn people, be quiet, don't say anything about this. I don't want people to know. And then it's kind of interesting. I don't know what the connection would be between the two things, that at the end, if it is the end, the women leave and don't say anything to anybody.
You've been conditioned to read that and think that the opposite happens.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I also wonder if, obviously, we believe that the Spirit inspired these writings, and it would make sense that these Gospels are meant to also be taken as a whole. That Mark, Matthew, Luke, John, even with their differences, give us a clear and a whole picture of what happened. And so I really think that, given that whatever happened there, whether, that, last page went missing, or, if it did, then that's by providence. And, or if that's how he meant to end it. Still, God knows that, there's going to be Matthew, there's Luke, and what happens in Matthew then makes sense of Mark, because if the women are really afraid and they don't say anything to anyone, then there is now reason for Jesus to show up. I mean, and all Jesus says is exactly what the angels told them to say. He just says the same thing to them.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Go and do that thing that the angels have told you to do. So it would make sense that they don't at first say anything. Or, you could take it as they just don't say anything to anybody along the way too. But they go straight to the disciples. But either way, they can harmonize, right? They can fit together. I really like Luke's account of going outside of resurrection accounts. Luke brings up the two angels before, I guess John does as well, but so that's a difference. But I really like Luke's accounts of Jesus's appearances to the disciples on the road to Emmaus, and then the other disciples, because I really like the references to the Old Testament. And I find that really helpful. And Luke is so, he's just really laying it on pretty thick that the ultimate witness has already been in their hands, right? And there's this running theme in all of the Gospels to take the message of what's happened at the tomb and go and testify, go and witness, and tell the disciples. But I like how Luke brings out how the scriptures do that, have been doing that, and are still are now are being fulfilled in what he's done. He does that in Luke 24 in verse 25. He does that with the two disciples on the road to Emmaus. It says he, opening up Moses and the prophets. And then when he gets to the disciples, he says it again in verse 44. These are my words that I spoke to you while I was still with you. And I love that too. I've already told you everything. That everything written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled. Then he opened their minds to understand the scriptures. And I think maybe what I like about that is that it ties us in beautifully, because we weren't there on that day. We didn't see the empty tomb. We didn't get to see all that stuff, but Jesus opens their minds to understand the scriptures. That's what then really helps them in their faith.
We have the scriptures, right?
We have that, and Christ still opens up our minds to understand the scriptures. So we have the same evidence actually that they have. And Peter even mentions that in his epistle when he's referring back to the transfiguration. He says we have the scriptures which are actually more
sure.
More sure.
No, I love that Luke does that, and it's funny. I mean, Luke's account. I think Jesus seems like he's having a good time. Like he walked for 7. That question you brought. I think you brought it out in your sermon. That like, oh, what things? And it's funny if you're reading it
It is.
and you know the story, as every reader would, that these guys are just, they're so sad and so depressed, and telling you how sad they are that Jesus is not the real Messiah, and he's cursed and all that, and there's Jesus walking right there.
For 7 miles too. That's a testament to his patience that they still don't recognize him. I'd just like, I mean, if I were Jesus, I would just, I would, yeah. They would, I can't take it anymore. It's me. But he has to, I mean, he's going to vanish, and then in a few days he's going to ascend into heaven, and he's not going to return for a long time. So what is going to be left for his disciples to hold on to? I mean, it's the scriptures, it's the supper, those things. We still today
Have
see him and have them.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. It brings us into the account very clearly. You know your place here. Okay, all right. I'm there right there with the disciples now, and now let me go back and do my Bible reading and see where he is.
And you can see him in the breaking of the bread. It's a really beautiful thing to think about in the context of Eucharistic service. We have word and sacrament every Sunday celebrating the resurrection, where we are those two being brought back from despair by the comfort that he brings us in his word, and by feeding us his body and blood. Luke is certainly of course, again, this is all historical. He's not making anything up, but he's shaping it and crafting it for the church, for that account of the two on the road to Emmaus, read in the setting of a church where, and we know this from Justin Martyr, where they're having the word read, and the preaching of the word, and then the sacrament is going to be even more compelling than it is when you're reading it by yourself, because you're having the very things these two have with them.
Yeah, and it's an important reminder that as Christians, Christ shows us where we're to look. If you are downcast, or you don't feel close to Jesus. Yeah, you mentioned this in your Bible study today about how sometimes you might feel close to God out in the wilderness and doing all sorts of things, and none of that stuff is necessarily bad. I mean, it's God's creation, and God's everywhere, and you can pray to him everywhere, and you may even feel some fuzzies whenever you're out there, and that's all fine and good. But where he promises to be seen in a unique way are in these outward means of word and sacrament, and that's why church is so important.
Yeah. You cannot have the body and blood of Christ outside of the church.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you have body and blood of Christ.
Yeah.
You can have the word outside of the gathered body, but not necessarily even in the same way.
Yeah.
I think a sermon is, if you're watching a sermon on YouTube or whatever, you can get good teaching. God can use that to give you grace. All of that, I don't doubt that, but there's something. It's not, preaching isn't a sacrament, but there's something sacramental about a sermon. In the same way, he's feeding you. The sacrament feeds you in one way, the word feeds you in another. But it's a kind of a supernatural thing. That's why I don't get too worried when people can't remember what I preached last Sunday or the Sunday before, because it's more than passing on information. You're not just trying to get information into people's heads. It's God is doing work in people's souls as you're preaching, and they may not even know what work's being done, and they might not be able to tell you what you said, but they have God. It's the same thing with the actual bread and the wine. You don't know, you can't tell exactly what God's doing in your soul when you partake in faith on the body and blood of Jesus, but he's doing something, and you're you're being changed by it. So so the sermon's not the same thing as a lecture, and the sacrament of communion isn't the same thing as a meal. It's a deeper works being done by God in both those things.
Yeah, you're exactly right. God's presence is there, uniquely there, among his disciples, and that's exactly what Paul's point in 1 Corinthians 3 is, you are the temple of God. Well, that means that God is there. That's like the Spirit. We have the Spirit in each of us individually, but when we come together, it's it's Spirit-filled people coming together, and the Spirit is then there among us,
right.
As one body. That is why you go to church, to see Christ, to be fed by him, to worship him. It's not a pastime.
Right. It's interesting, Jesus, we're coming up on Good Shepherd Sunday, and I think that the Road to Emmaus account is one of the first post-resurrection shepherding accounts that we have. Mm-hmm. Here are these disciples after the resurrection. They've heard the news from the women. They haven't believed it, obviously, or half believed it, or whatever, and they're leaving the church. They're going home.
Yeah,
they're headed out. Why? And you kind of understand them, I guess. They're just bewildered. They don't know what they're doing, but they're sheep. They don't know what else to do, so they do a sheep-like thing, and they go back to the to the stall or whatever. And so Jesus has to come, and and after he breaks the bread and they recognize him, then they run back to the church. Yeah. So I think it's a beautiful kind of act of the great shepherd being the bishop of these souls and
wandering sheep.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, that is a wonderful image. I like too, on the point of being in church and with the disciples. I think that's why Jesus also waits to show himself to Thomas, because Thomas has to wait 8 days, so Sunday to Sunday, and so. And what does the text say? John says that he's there on that next week with the disciples.
Yeah, he's staying.
He's very, like, the gospel writers are, especially John there, he's being purposeful. I mean, like the church reading those things as gathered disciples, would read that as understanding. Of course, that's where you got to be. That's where Jesus is gonna be. In fact, didn't he promise where 2 or 3 are gathered? There I am in the midst of them. So you're exactly right. Jesus, the great shepherd, is gathering his sheep together and then meeting with them. And that's where he is. And so when Hebrews then says, don't neglect to meet together, that's why the shepherd's here. Sheep go to your shepherd and gather together and you'll see him. And then that's why he gives, under shepherds to go and get the others that are roaming around. So I before we're done for today, I want to maybe look at a few other accounts and maybe some odd things in the accounts. I want to maybe you have some thoughts, but one that was on my mind is in John. It's when Jesus meets with the disciples and has breakfast with them.
Yes.
Well, I mean, there's a lot we could look at here. One thing that I find funny, just as an aside, is that like how everything that happens here with them casting out their nets and then Jesus on the shore saying, "Oh, why don't you cast them out to the other side?" And they're like, "What?" Like this scene has not happened before. But I think what I really love about this account is the reinstating of Peter. I find that to be a really beautiful picture of Peter having denied Jesus 3 times, and then Jesus giving him these 3 times to kind of be restored. And then there's this interesting comparison that he makes with John. Jesus says, and it's just interesting that John would end his gospel with this. That he says to Peter, "If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? You follow me." Why do you think John puts that in there? Is it because he's super old? It's like 90 AD maybe, or maybe, and they're like, and everyone's like, when all the other apostles have, when's this guy?
Well, it says there's a saying spread abroad among the brothers that this disciple is not to die. Jesus did not say to him that he was not to die, but if I is my will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? So yeah.
Do you think he's just he's correcting
he's correcting a rumor? It looks like there's some rumor that's going around because of what Jesus said. And there's also kind of this weird. I would love to know the relationship between John and Peter, because this weird interplay here, where Peter seems to be kind of jealous about, well, hey, I'm going to die. What about him? and Jesus says, well, it's none of your business. So I'll deal with him. But then, then John makes sure to, of course, record the race that he won. I mean, it just seems like Peter's dead, and John's going after him.
He can't say anything.
In the other disciple, like the other gospels, all when they come to arrest Jesus in the garden, Matthew, Mark, Luke, they say one of the disciples pulled out his sword and chopped, and took a swing at the servant of the high priest. John says, "Oh, it was Peter. Peter's the guy who did that."
Yeah. Oh man. Angel showed me a funny video where a guy was kind of acting like he was all 4 of the gospel writers. Yeah. And like they're all being really polite. And then John is like, oh, I'm going to tell the truth about all of this. Peter. His name was Peter. Yeah, that'll be an interesting conversation to have. Why he adds that. On the topic of Peter, Jesus appears to Peter. Why do you think we don't have that account? It seems like that would be kind of an important one.
Yeah, you're talking about that mention in Luke. By the time the 2 from Emmaus come back, they say, "Oh, he's risen. Peter has seen him." When did that happen? Yeah, I was excuse me. I tried to harmonize this. Another probably very forgettable sermon that I preached on Easter like many years ago was the harmonization of all the gospel accounts. I should not have done that.
How long was that sermon?
I'm sure it was too long on Easter Monday, but
I'm sure it was helpful.
Yeah. Well, maybe. To some, I think what happened is, John tells us that when Mary Magdalene comes, John and Peter run back. John wins the race. John tells us that all the women show up to tell the disciples that they've seen the angels, and we can presume they also say that they've seen Jesus. And then Luke tells us only Peter runs back after he's got the whole company of the disciples have worked. I personally think these are 2 different races. The first one is, oh no, they've stolen the body. Let's go make sure that Jesus' body is safe. Peter and John run off after they hear from Mary Magdalene. But the second, I think, when Peter hears from all the women that they've actually seen Jesus, he says, I got to go back. And so I think he runs back a second time. And I bet that's when he sees him, or he comes maybe on the way. Maybe he sees him at the tomb. Maybe he sees him the way back after running to the tomb. I think that's probably when he sees him. That's my guess. And I don't know why we're not told. My guess that we wouldn't be told, maybe because there was something very, there's Peter failed in a big way. He's not reinstated until the John 21, but I think it was important for Jesus to preach the gospel to his disciples right off the bat. So when Mary, all the women grab Jesus's feet and hold on to him, he does add something to the angel's words. The angel said, "Go tell the disciples that he's risen and he'll meet them in Galilee." Jesus says, "Go tell my brothers that I'll meet them in Galilee," which is a very tender thing to say, because all of those men are in hiding. They've all scattered. They've all failed to be faithful. They've all denied him before men, and they might be afraid of him denying them before the Father. But his first words as a message to them are, "Tell my brothers to meet me in Galilee." So of those who were there, Judas is not there, but of those who were there who failed in their faithfulness, Peter's the worst, right? He's had the loudest boasts, and he's fallen the furthest. So I think it would make sense that Jesus would meet him and kind of console him and forgive him, and set him back into his church. Again, another shepherding moment. And then he makes, then you have the official reinstatement beside the Sea of Galilee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've been thinking that too, but my hang up now is that the two disciples on the road to Emmaus seem to point to Peter going back. And then they say that he didn't see him, unless they meant like others went too at some point. Because of course, anything could have happened. I mean, you could have had Peter go and see the empty tomb. And then at some point, it's just not recorded for us. Jesus appears to him at that time.
I think they're talking about what John records. Peter and John racing to the tomb early in the morning.
But I don't know if that would work, because you have in Luke, they've already, like, the way the narrative follows is you have all the women now saying that they've seen the angels and Jesus, because the two disciples say, the women have told us, mm-hmm. which would then mean that if Peter goes a second time, he goes that second time. And if now they say some of those who
but the two from Emmaus had already left before Peter comes back from that second time.
But that's my question. That's the hang up, because they didn't leave until they heard from those who went also to see the tomb empty and come back and say that they saw the tomb empty, but didn't see Jesus. But maybe it's in the plural there, because they say some of those.
Yeah, John and Peter.
Yeah, who went with it. So, then that would suggest that it wasn't a second time Peter went.
No,
right?
No, because these guys leave before Peter has his vision, or Peter sees Jesus.
Yes. Yeah.
They leave. All the information they have is the women have come back and reported what they've seen. And they have that Peter and John, after Mary Magdalene came earlier in the morning, ran to the tomb and also saw that the tomb is empty. That's what they tell Jesus that they have.
Wait, but those Mary comes and tells John and Peter, not all the women, right? Mary comes and tells John and Peter, and then they go.
Right, but then John and Peter, we were presuming, are going to be with the other disciples. So they would have said.
So Mary comes back. Mary comes she tells the disciples,
Yeah.
John and Peter go. I guess that could be it, but it seems like Luke is referring to. It seems like Luke is referring to the time when all the women come and tell.
No, he is. Yeah, but so.
But you think? Oh, but you think the two disciples leave before that?
Yeah. They go like right as Mary goes to the tomb first.
Yeah.
She runs to tell the disciples. John and Peter go. They have their experience there. So they come back. Mary comes back. The women come back. They all say, "Yeah, we the tomb's empty." All of them say that. And then the people from the road to Emmaus leave. So they have the testimony of the two disciples and the women that this tomb is empty. And they don't have the testimony of Peter that he's seen Jesus yet, because that hasn't happened yet.
Okay, so let me get this straight. How you're saying it? You're saying
this is all live working through the.
I know, yeah, yeah. Well, we have to. Okay, you're saying that Mary comes, tells the disciples these two guys are there. They hear Peter and John come back and say, "Well, we didn't see him." Then, yeah. Then the women come, say, "We saw vision of angels," and then Peter goes a second time. But the guys have already heard from Peter and John. They've left. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they say to Jesus. They don't know what they're saying to Jesus, but they said, some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but did not see him. Mm-hmm. So that couldn't have been the time Peter went, because Peter saw Jesus. So.
Yeah. I guess it all hangs on. It seems to hang on whether or not that's the second time Peter goes. Because if Luke is just focusing on Peter, and that's when Peter and John go, then that would also make sense. But at some point Jesus has to show up to Peter, and it's got to be before. It seems like it's before these guys. Well, Paul says he then appeared to Peter.
Right.
Of course.
I think the plural is important. Some of us went. I mean, he's talking there that he's distinguishing between the men and the women.
Yeah.
Some men went to go see the tomb, and earlier he's just mentioned Peter alone. So I don't know.
Yeah. So no, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Well, we figured that one out. Is there any other odd thing about the resurrection or appearance accounts that you usually bring up during Easter?
Well, it's all very odd, the whole idea of resurrection.
Like the resurrection?
The resurrection itself. No one expected it, the resurrection to happen. So it's a pretty odd thing, all in itself. But no, I mean, I think it's I think all of the accounts have what we'd expect them to have. People losing their minds about the whole thing, not believing what their eyes are seeing because it's who would expect it. The Jesus being Jesus, having a good time. I love that he eats. Like, I was telling Anne this morning, maybe Jesus didn't actually eat the bread with the two from Emmaus because he knew he still had to eat fish at the.
Don't want to ruin his appetite.
The upper room didn't ruin his appetite. Yes. So, and I love that he eats fish. I love that he just decides to, like, the first thing he says is hello, and the second thing he says is, "Hey, I'm hungry." Which I know, like, yes, he's trying. He's demonstrating the physicality of his body, but it's also kind of funny. It's he's clearly enjoying himself.
A part of having, real body and being really a man is having a real resurrected sense of humor.
Yeah.
Glorified sense of humor. My kids this morning, last night at dinner, my little daughter, she every time we want to pray, we're going to pray, she has to pray. So of course I let her. And she she said, thank you for this lunch. And then she sort of like started laughing, and she's like, I call dinner lunch. And then, we were all chuckling a little bit. And so that, they were talking a little bit about if God was silly or not. I was like, I think he is. I think God is silly. I think, I think he likes a good laugh. He may have laughed at your little lunch joke there. Oh man. Yeah. I think it's C.S. Lewis who really pulled it out, that Satan is the serious one.
Right.
He is the one who's really serious, super serious. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I love all the little bits of fun that he's having with his disciples, because he kind of just defeated death. It's like there's a lot of victory that he just gained. Kind of have a laugh. Well, good. Thought that was an appropriate first episode back, being it being still Easter. But we'll go ahead and end it there for today. Thank you, everyone who joined the live stream, and to anyone listening to the podcast later. I'll add, if you like the stuff that we're putting out, we'd love for you to subscribe to this Substack. And if you'd like to support the Cranmer Fellows, there's an option of becoming a paid subscriber, and your contribution will go directly to the training of ministers in the church and through our fellowship. So thank you for listening, and thank you, as always, Matt, for helping us think through all these things. Have a great rest of your evening, and Lord willing, we'll see you next week. See you, Matt.